Hey, this is Tyler with TJX Survival and Survival Dispatch. I'm going to tell you a survival story that happened to us right here quite a few years ago, so stick with me. So, quite a few years ago, I helped facilitate a survival class that went all across the land in this area. I wasn't the instructor or the main person. I was a student in the class, but I also put all the students together. I made this thing happen. We were with a very world-renowned instructor named Dave, and I'm only going to use first names in this, so protect the innocent. Okay, so to recount this trip, it was a primitive trip, no knives, no anything really. We weren't bringing canteens or anything. We were just taking clothes. In fact, I'm overdressed having this knife, but it's pretty representational of what I had and what we had on this trip. We were going out for about a week, and we were 3 or 4 days with no food. We'd been making friction fire. You're not being dumb, right? There was one person there with a backpack that had sat phone and fire starters and those kind of things. But the rest of us were essentially with nothing. We were kind of moving like a primitive tribe where we'd spread out and we would search for things and we'd come back together and we'd separate and meet in a spot. About day 3, on the other side of this valley, we all got together and said, we had a map. We said we're going to either go around the ring of this valley or head out across the bottom of this valley. And we were at a spot where there was this old mine that was really cool. We were kind of climbing down the mine, and 2 people, I'll call them Justin and the brother, they know who they are, decided to go out in front of us. And in their defense, they had the location that we're supposed to be, which was over on the mountain over here. But right after we separated, I was in the front behind these 2. So I was in the front of the main group, tracking them in the sand. It's fairly easy to track people out here. And I tracked them for 3 or 4 hours. I tracked them until about noon. And right at noon, we were in the dead center of this valley out here. And hailstorm picked up, lightning happened. We just completely started getting dumped on with rain, and the weather just turned really south, right? Right now, in the same area where it's about the same time of year, it's sunny and nice, but yesterday it was raining hard here yesterday. So you get these bursts of squalls that will hit hard, flash flood, and be dry 12 hours later. Most of the rain out here will hit and be done in a few hours. So we gathered together out in the middle of this field underneath the tree, the main group minus the 2 people that were in the front, and we decided to do friction fire. We were doing bow drills and hand drills. We busted a coal, killed it, busted another coal, and by then people were kind of shivering. Busted out the lighter, the thumb drill, right, and made a little fire. And we kind of gathered and thought, well, we don't want to be here in the open out in the middle of the valley. We need to get to the place we're going to go so everybody can meet up and we can reassess what we're going to do tomorrow. Well, as we started to move out, the storm moved in heavy and thick. It started coming down hard. Most people were in cotton clothes. I had this hat on, a cotton jacket, cotton pants, and the same Huarache sandals on. I was fine, but it kind of gives you an idea of the low amount of equipment that we had. This storm started about 12:30 in the afternoon, and by the time we got across the valley, after having stopped twice to make fires, just to dry ourselves out, we were making these 6-foot tall bonfires where even though it was raining, the heat of it would dry us out. And it's out in a spot over there where it's legal to have fires, before anyone freaks out on that. But we made some really big fires in the middle of this rainstorm, dried ourselves out, and then kept moving across the valley. Well, because of the intensity of the rain, it pounded out every footprint. There was no way to figure out where the footprints were at, and I kind of lost track of the two people that started out ahead. I'm going to come back to this point of the story and tell you Justin's perspective, and I'll kind of tell you where we split and what happened with those two things. So we got to this point right here, and it was about dusk-ish. I mean, it was dark according to my memory, and keep in mind this is quite a few years ago. And we were coming up this canyon, and we ran into BOSS instructors, Boulder Outdoor Survival instructors. Yelled out a hoot, whoop! Got a reply, which was shocking because someone's here. And so we brought the bulk of the students to that location. Myself, another guy, and two other guys decided to go look for the other two people that we were missing, because now it's about dark. I had a chance to dry out twice and kind of hit the reset. I was feeling better. Granted, we're about 2 or 3 days deep with really no food. We'd probably covered 20 miles that day, at least 18 miles or 15 to 18 miles that day before we decided to go out. Well, here's what I should have done. What you do when you get separated like that is you go back to the point where you guys are both split up and you wait until you meet there. I was exhausted, not thinking straight. This isn't technically my rodeo, but I'm feeling responsible. And we headed out across this valley, and I was still kind of in tracking mode. And I made a box around this valley. I went one canyon over, went out, and boxed back, just hyper-focusing on footprints. I figured if I could find 2 footprints, I'd know where they were. And keep in mind, I had tracked Justin for 4 hours earlier that day. I knew what his footprints looked like. I knew what I was looking for on that. And we boxed it, and I only found one set of footprints that was following a fence line, but there wasn't 2, and there's 2 people I'm looking for. So we weren't able to find him. The brother of the guy that was with Justin headed back about 10 and 11 o'clock at night, 9, 10 o'clock at night, to the main guys up in the canyon, and just kind of relayed what was going on. And me and the guy who was actually running the show, we headed this way to pick up my vehicle, because the theory was we'll bring the vehicle over, set it up on a hill, turn the headlights on, let that thing idle all night, and wherever these guys are that are lost, because keep in mind they don't have a lighter, they don't have winter equipment, they're basically wearing just hiking pants, a light jacket, shoes, and a hat, like no equipment. The theory was if something goes south, they can see the headlights of the car, and also I had a drone in the car. So if I could get to my car and it stopped raining, we could pull the drone out and look for them, or we can park the car up in the hill, turn the light on, they can come to us, they can get in the car and drive out. Well, about 1 o'clock in the morning, a friend of ours from in town with a large truck ran into me and the other guy at a junction over here where we had started a fire, because we're done, right? This is day 4-ish, no food, constant hiking, 25 or more miles, 28 miles, I don't know, a bunch of miles, I'm totally speculating here. And we were just kind of done. And you don't want to be the rescuer that needs to be rescued. So that's why we stopped in this location, started a fire. We're just gonna sleep until morning. But it was at a junction of Y where if anyone came or went, they'd have to drive right past us. So we got picked up about 12:30 at night. We rode into town with our friend, took a shower, ate some food, slept until about 5 o'clock in the morning, which is just a couple hours, and come back out. Another friend had reported that 2 people had been seen at the local store there eating food, and we thought, okay, maybe they were rescued. Maybe those are the people that we're looking for. So we spent a little time driving around the city trying to see if these were these guys, and went in and checked back with the spouse of one of the instructors, and come to find out it wasn't those guys. It was 2 rock climbers. So now I'm freaking out a little bit, because from 12:30 in the afternoon all through the afternoon all the way into midnight before the rain stops, and here we are 6, 7 o'clock in the next morning thinking that our people had been rescued or caught a ride, when in reality they've been spending the night out in this environment in that cold with nothing. Okay, so that's when I start to really get worried. Well, we went out to this location again, and that's why I keep referencing, because I remember just sitting here trying to decide, do we call search and rescue? What do we do? I threw a drone up and I drove it along the ridge line over here and out across the valley, and I'd kind of go high and I'd see something move and I'd get down and it was a cow, and then I'd go high and I would see something moving and I'd get down and it was an elk, right? I saw a farmer on a side-by-side once, and then I get going up high and I see something moving and I get down low to where I can see it, and it's two dudes walking down the trail. I'm like, oh, okay. So I brought my drone down, told our buddy where Justin and the brother were at, and he takes the truck, because he can see the video of the drone, takes the truck out and picks them up, and it's like complete relief to me, right? It's like the rescue has happened. So going back to where I split with Justin and the brother, so these two decided to go out ahead of us to the location that we were going to go to, and they went there. They didn't see anybody. The rain started. They started to head back to the other side of the valley where we initially split up. Remember when I said that's what you're supposed to do, but we didn't do? Now you know. And then they come back into the valley, and I hope Justin can tell his side of the story on this, but he picks up a stick, a rabbit stick, because he sees a rabbit that he wants to throw at. And he misses the rabbit, but as he's looking at the rabbit, he sees a water tank right out here that we knew existed, and now they've got water. So they went over and they were able to get water, and then they went looking for us again, and they found what he thought was lightning strike fire. And it was a fire just in the middle of nowhere that was starting to burn down with no footprints around it. Now, this is the location where the main group and myself had started a large fire and let it wind down. And normally you wouldn't leave a fire unattended, but we're talking about 12 hours of rain, so we left it burning just in case we got into a situation where we had to come back and fire it back up, or in case Justin found it. Well, he and the brother spent time at that fire, and they were able to make it through the night because that fire was left over for them to sit and be warm by. Then they basically fired it up and kind of chat stories and stayed underneath there, and then slept a little bit the next morning, and then got up and were walking back when they heard a buzzing noise. At that time is when my drone come down, and I found him, and we were able to bring him back in. So the moral takeaway on this thing is, even when you do trips that are no equipment trips and the goal is to try to do without, it's okay to break the rules, sneak a lighter. And even when you go on a trip where other people are responsible for you, it's okay to remember it's always your responsibility to be responsible for yourself, so that if the other people become incapacitated or something happens, you've got a plan B. So when it comes to survival, cheat. When it comes to escape and evasion, cheat. When it comes to criminal defense, cheat, right? So that's my takeaway. If you're gonna go do trips, it's good to learn how to do with nothing, but do not separate yourself from the bag of kit that can save your life. It's good to learn how to do primitive skills, but always have that backup just in case things go south. I personally, that night, I struggled to make fire at 2 o'clock in the morning after having been in rain for 12 and a half hours straight. Everything was damp. You could squeeze the trees and it would spit water out. And the only reason I was able to get a fire that night is because earlier on in that day, I had grabbed a big old bundle of red bark river birch. And I remember trying to dry out juniper bark. This stuff that is normally super flammable and full of resin, right? It's got resin, and this stuff goes up like dynamite. I mean, it's amazing. This stuff will burn. But it was so wet, I would squeeze it and it was dripping out. So the way I made fire that night is I made 2 balls of this juniper bark, and I put vertical chunks of red river birch bark straight up and down. And if you've never seen that stuff, when you lighted it, puts off black smoke. It's basically full of oil, right? So you light it, and as I was lighting at the bottom, the flame would go up and it would hold, and that bark burnt. It caught the juniper bark on fire, and it spread. And then the logs I had to use, because I was out in the open, were old lightning strike trees from old forest fires, which are really hard to burn. But I was able to become successful with that because I had a lighter and because I had options. All right, guys, I hope that you like the tale of survival, what to do and what not to do. If any of this is interesting to you, leave questions below, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, follow us on Rumble, and thank you for watching.
Can we go in the room?
I think that would be the last second
Yeah.
of the video.